Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Zhang. Welcome back to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. I'm so glad you're here. On last week's episode, I talked about why a 50-year mortgage is a bad idea, and how needing a 50-year loan to buy a property is a clear sign that you probably can't truly afford it. I often tell people to focus on the total cost of a purchase, not just the monthly payment, when figuring out if a property, or really any big purchase, really fits in their finances. That brings us to today's topic. How do you figure out how much house you can really afford if you're not just basing it on monthly payments as a percentage of your income? Most people will rely on the 28 or 30% rule for their monthly mortgage. But that doesn't really tell you whether the house fits your life, your goals, or your future. So today, I want to walk you through a better way, one that starts with your priorities and ends with a house that truly makes sense for you. Before you even start looking at listings or talking to a lender, take a step back and think about your bigger financial goals. How much do you want to be saving and investing each year towards retirement or other long-term plans? How much flexibility do you want to have in your life? Maybe to cut back at work at some point, take a sabbatical, or just have extra freedom. Once you're clear on that, your housing budget becomes a result of your plan, not the thing that dictates it. For example, if you have a household income of $300,000 a year after taxes, and you've decided to save around $100,000 a year, that leaves you with about $200,000 to cover everything else. Your living expenses, any childcare, travel you want to do, things like insurance, and yes, the cost of housing. Now you can ask yourself how much of that $200,000 you're willing to spend on a house while still living the life that you want. That's very different from asking how much the bank will lend you. You can think of this as making a reverse budget. Now, I know that I usually talk about making a spending plan instead of a budget. And the reason for that is a budget typically sounds restrictive, as opposed to having a plan is always a good idea. But here, we're actually trying to restrict how much we're spending on housing based on wanting to have enough money for everything else. So I'm okay saying reverse budget in this case. What we're doing here is, instead of starting with your income and working out how much you want to save, instead, start with your savings goal and then work backwards. First, decide on how much you want to save. Then subtract out what you spend on everything other than your housing. This includes necessary expenses like food, transportation, household supplies, and childcare, but also includes whatever you want to spend on shopping, entertainment, and travel. Make sure you're including every expense, everything that you spend money on. Things like professional services such as your accountant and the premium of your disability insurance, the kind of things that you may only pay once a year. You also want to include whatever you donate to charity. The remainder is the maximum that you can comfortably spend on housing. Remember, if you're renting, you may be paying for utilities, but your rent is essentially covering many of the other expenses that go with property ownership. It's important to remember that your mortgage is only one piece of the puzzle. Owning a home comes with taxes, insurance, maintenance, and sometimes even HOA fees. These costs can all add up quickly. If you buy $1 million home, you may spend $10,000 to $20,000 a year on maintenance alone. Add in property taxes and homeowners insurance, and suddenly the monthly cash that you're spending is much higher than the principal and interest on your loan. For physicians, it's also worth mentioning physician loan programs. These programs often allow physicians to obtain a mortgage with a lower down payment or potentially no down payment at all. They may also waive the private mortgage insurance, which is typically required on loans when there's less than a 20% down payment. This can help a physician purchase a home without really having much money up front. But even with these programs, the same principles apply. You want to make sure that the total cost of home ownership fits within your broader financial plan. Just because a loan program says you can borrow a certain amount doesn't mean it's the right amount for your life and goals. I also encourage thinking in terms of net worth growth. Will this home help you build wealth or slow it down? After your down payment and closing costs, how much money will you still have left in liquid assets? A good balance is to make sure your home doesn't dominate your net worth, leaving you flexibility and freedom for the future. Before making any decision, make sure to stress test the numbers. What if you or your spouse ends up taking a break from work? What if your home insurance premiums increase significantly or a major repair comes up? A new roof could easily cost $30,000 or more. If you can comfortably handle these scenarios, then you're probably in a safe range. Let's walk through a real example. Imagine a household with $300,000 of take-home pay per year, which comes out to being $25,000 a month. You want to save $7,500 a month towards retirement, additional savings, and investments. Your living expenses, including things like food, transportation, shopping, entertainment, and insurance, are about $10,000 a month. This leaves $7,500 a month for housing. Now let's estimate that utilities average $500 a month. Property taxes and insurance rates vary across the country, but to keep the math simple, let's factor in $2,000 for those expenses. We'll set aside another $1,000 a month for maintenance, including costs like lawn care, repairing or replacing appliances or things like the furnace or AC, and just general routine maintenance. This leaves $4,000 a month for the mortgage payment. With today's rates, around 6.25% for a 30-year fixed loan, that supports a mortgage of roughly $650,000. With a 20% down payment, the total home price comes in around $810,000. That's a home that comfortably fits the goal in this example. If in this example, a physician loan is used, such that no down payment is required, that means looking at a home priced at $650,000, the amount of the mortgage which meets the goals. A lender may approve this household for a $1.1 million mortgage, which would create a principal and interest monthly payment of around $6,800. That is just under 28% of the $25,000 monthly take-home. However, after adding in property tax, insurance, utilities, and maintenance, this could bring your monthly housing costs to a bit over $10,000 a month. This would likely decrease savings and potentially add stress. So even if you can afford it technically, it may not be the right decision if it comes at the cost of peace of mind or long-term goals. The better question to ask is what allows you to live comfortably, sleep well, and stay on track with your life without feeling house poor or trapped. Because when it comes down to it, you're not just buying a house, you're building a life. The right home should fit your version of wealth, not anyone else's. I get it. I love looking at beautiful houses. And there's certainly times where I've visited someone's home and wish I lived in such a nice house. Something with higher ceilings or a stone facade. But in the end, it's much more important to me to have financial flexibility, to work less, to be able to travel more, and I'm very comfortable in my current home. Could I afford a nicer home? I could, but it would come with the need to work more or not travel as much. To me, those trade-offs just aren't worth it. If you're in the process of buying a home or thinking about upgrading, take a step back and look at the big picture. Run the numbers based on your goals, not what the bank says. Make sure your home supports your life and not the other way around. Thank you so much for being a listener of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. If this episode gave you a new perspective on home affordability, share it with a friend or colleague who may be thinking about buying a new home. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you.